There are moments in life when you look back at old wounds and wonder why certain people had the power to hurt you so deeply. You wonder why God allowed you to walk through betrayal, rejection, abandonment, and disappointment. You wonder why He didn't stop certain people from leaving, why He didn't close the mouths of the ones who lied about you, why He didn't shield you from the ones who broke you. But today I want to tell you something that will settle your heart. God allowed their hurt because He was preparing a greater protection over your destiny. There are wounds that were not meant to destroy you. They were meant to redirect you. There are people who walked away not because you weren't valuable, but because they were not assigned to your future. There are others who betrayed you not because you lacked discernment, but because God needed to expose their true intentions before they walked into the next level with you. God saw what you could not see. God heard conversations your ears never heard. God understood motives your heart could not perceive. And because of His love, He allowed certain hurts to protect you from greater harm. Sometimes protection doesn't look like a shield. It looks like separation. It looks like disappointment. It looks like unanswered prayers. It looks like tears on your pillow when you thought God had abandoned you. But what if the pain was the evidence that God was working? What if the heartbreak was the exit door for danger? What if the loneliness was the healing God needed to do before He trusted you with elevation? Think about it. Every time someone walked out of your life, God walked in with something better. Every time you cried over someone who left, God was preparing someone who would treat you with honor. Every time you thought you lost everything, God was getting ready to restore you with something divine. You see, the hurt they caused was not a punishment, it was a protection. You didn't lose them, they were removed. You didn't fail, they were filtered. God was pulling you away from people who could not handle the oil on your life. There are moments when God lets someone break your heart so that He can break your attachment. Because attachment can become a prison when the person is not aligned with your assignment. You may have loved them, but God saw the conversations they had behind your back. You trusted them, but God saw the jealousy hidden in their heart. You depended on them, but God saw how they would have sabotaged your future. So He allowed the hurt, not to wound you permanently, but to wake you spiritually. Some of you are still grieving people who were never meant to stay. You are still hurting over things God used to deliver you from. You are still looking at the wound, but God is trying to show you the wisdom behind the wound. Hurt was the angel God used to push you out of relationships that would have strangled your destiny. Hurt was the wind God used to blow you out of places that no longer matched the spiritual level He was calling you to. Hurt was the hand of heaven nudging you into purpose. Remember this, God never wastes pain. If He allowed it, it carries purpose. If He permitted it, it carries protection. Nothing touched your life without heaven's signature. Even what the enemy planned to use as destruction, God rerouted it into direction. Even the people who tried to break you were unknowingly building you. Even the enemy's attack was secretly God's training ground for your next level. You might think, but why did it have to hurt so much? Because sometimes God has to let the blow land so you will move. If it didn't hurt, you wouldn't have left. If it didn't hurt, you wouldn't have prayed. If it didn't hurt, you wouldn't have changed your path. If it didn't hurt, you wouldn't have discovered God's faithfulness. Hurt forced you into a deeper relationship with God. Hurt made you seek Him with a new desperation. Hurt made you grow in discernment. Hurt gave you spiritual maturity. Hurt built wisdom. Hurt sharpened your awareness. Hurt cultivated your sensitivity to God's voice. Look back at your life. Every painful chapter was the doorway to a greater blessing. Every storm prepared you for greater strength. Every betrayal built resilience within you. What they meant for evil, God turned into the very weapon that now guards your heart, sharpens your spirit, and protects your purpose. You are not who you used to be. You are wiser now. You see clearer now. You discern quicker now. You trust God deeper now. You no longer fall for the same traps. You no longer attach to the wrong voices. God shaped you through hurt so that he could shield you through wisdom. And now, because of that painful season, your spirit is sharper. You can sense danger long before it arrives. You can perceive false people by the tone of their voice. You can feel spiritual misalignment before it manifests naturally. You've grown, you've matured, you've changed. The hurt transformed you into a version of yourself the enemy can no longer manipulate. So today, stand still, breathe, lift your head, and know this. God allowed their hurt to become your protection. You didn't go through all that pain for nothing. Heaven was guarding the destiny you haven't even stepped into yet. God was securing your future before you even prayed for it. Their exit was your covering. Their betrayal was your blessing. Their rejection was your redirection. Their hurt was your hedge of protection. And God is not finished. He's about to show you why the pain had to happen. He's about to reveal the blessing behind the breaking. He's about to prove that every tear was counted, every wound was seen, and every season was woven into his perfect plan for you. You are walking into a future protected by God himself, and no hurt, no betrayal, no enemy, and no weapon can stop what God is about to do in your life. There are moments in your life when the pain you went through did not make sense. You cried to God asking, "Why did they treat me like that? Why did they walk away? Why did that opportunity crumble just when it was within my reach?" You stood there confused, believing you were losing something important, not realizing you were actually being protected from something dangerous. You thought you were being pushed into loneliness, but heaven was shielding you from a path that would have destroyed your peace. Many times, the hurt that came into your life was not a sign of God abandoning you. It was evidence that God was standing between you and unseen harm. When people rejected you, you felt the sting. But what you did not see was the conversation they had about you behind closed doors, the intentions they carried in their hearts, the jealousy they hid behind their smiles. God saw what you did not. God heard what you could not. God discerned what you had no way to understand. So he allowed their behavior to show itself early. He allowed the mask to fall off before you built your future around the wrong people. Sometimes the hurt was God pulling the curtain back so you could recognize who never deserved access to your destiny. You thought it was heartbreak, but heaven called it protection. There have been opportunities that slipped out of your hands at the last second. You thought it was unfair. You blamed yourself. You wondered what you could have done differently. But what if that door did not close because you were unqualified, but because the place behind that door was filled with traps you couldn't see? What if God prevented you from entering a room that would have poisoned your spirit? Not everything that looks like a blessing is a blessing. Not everyone who smiles at you is for you. Not every open door is from God. And sometimes the only way God can protect you from walking into the wrong future is by allowing something to hurt enough that you step back and wait. There were friendships that became painful. There were people you trusted who betrayed you. There were individuals you thought would be with you forever, but they walked away when you needed them most, and you questioned your worth, your value, your identity. But heaven was not watching you crumble. Heaven was watching you be separated from what could have delayed your purpose. Some people carry storms inside them. Some hearts are not aligned with God's plan for your destiny. Some connections would have drained you, distracted you, and slowly dismantled your calling. So God allowed their true character to surface, not to punish you, but to protect you. Think back. If everyone who hurt you stayed in your life, would you be who you are today? If every connection you lost remained, would you have grown? Would your faith have matured? Would you have become stronger, wiser, more discerning? Sometimes God has to let a relationship break so your identity can be rebuilt on Him, not on people. Sometimes God has to let you stand alone so you can learn to stand strong. Sometimes God has to allow a painful exit so he can prepare you for a divine entrance. And there were moments when you prayed for something that never came. You asked God for a yes, and he remained silent. You wanted a certain job, a certain partnership, a certain opportunity, and it did not happen. But if you could see what God saw, if you could see the burden behind that blessing, you would thank him for every no he ever gave you. You would thank him for every delay he orchestrated. You would thank him for every person he removed, because some hurts are heaven's alarms, some disappointments are divine shields, some losses are actually escapes. The hurt was not sent to break you. It was allowed to redirect you. If that person had stayed in your life, they would have distracted you from your assignment. If that plan had succeeded, you would have settled for something far smaller than God's purpose. If that relationship had continued, your heart would have been tied to someone who did not respect your calling. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. What you labeled as loss, God labeled as rescue. God's love does not always feel gentle. Sometimes his protection feels like pain. Sometimes his guidance feels like disappointment. Sometimes his mercy feels like separation. When God steps between you and danger, you rarely recognize it in the moment. But later, when you look back, you realize the hurt saved you, the betrayal freed you, the delay preserved you, the closed door guided you, and the tears watered the ground for a coming breakthrough. You are not here today by accident. You are here because God protected you from things you never even knew were coming. There are moments in life when you look back at the wounds others gave you, words that cut deep, betrayals that shook your confidence, abandonment that left you questioning your worth, and you wonder why God didn't step in sooner. You wonder why he allowed the knife to get that close, why he allowed the disappointment to reach your heart, why he allowed people you trusted to be the very ones who weakened you. But what you didn't realize then, and what the Spirit of God wants you to see now, is that some wounds were never meant to break you. They were meant to wake you. They were God's early alarms, his coded whispers, his protective warnings that said, this person cannot go with you into your future. And because we, as humans, love too deeply, trust too quickly, and hope too broadly, God sometimes allows the hurt to speak louder than words, so we recognize what our hearts tried to ignore. There were people who smiled at you but were envious of your calling. People who clapped for you publicly but competed with you privately. People who acted close but carried quiet poison. And God, in his mercy, allowed their true nature to surface, not to crush your spirit, but to protect the destiny he placed in you. If he had not exposed their heart through the hurt they caused, you would have carried the wrong souls into the right season, and that combination would have destroyed what God was preparing you for. You thought it was rejection, but it was preservation. You thought it was loss, but it was divine filtering. You thought it was betrayal, but it was God clearing the path of people who would only slow you down, drain your energy, weaken your conviction, or pull you away from his assignment. Some of the pain you went through was not because you were weak, but because you were valuable. The enemy saw your future, and he sent people to drain you before you grew into it. And God, who sees all, knows all, and understands every hidden intention, allowed certain hurts to happen early so they wouldn't hurt worse later. You prayed for discernment, and God answered not with a dream, not with a prophecy, not with a voice, but with an experience. He let people show you who they truly were. He let their actions reveal the state of their heart. He let their behavior expose the agenda they were hiding, because sometimes the only way God can get you to let go is to let the pain tell the truth. And maybe right now You are still trying to understand why someone you trusted walked away, why someone you loved was allowed to break your heart, why someone you supported turned cold, why someone you championed suddenly became your critic. But God allowed it because He knew their presence would have cost you more than their absence ever will. He saw the long-term danger you couldn't see. He saw the spiritual weight you didn't feel. He saw their jealousy growing, their resentment rising, their bitterness forming, their loyalty fading. And instead of letting you be blindsided in a crucial season, God let you see their true colors when you were still strong enough to recover. The hurt you survived did not destroy you. It delivered you. It delivered you from wrong partnerships, wrong investments, wrong emotional ties, wrong friendships, wrong alliances. You didn't lose them. God removed them because He knew you would never walk into certain places if you were still carrying certain people. He knew your heart was too loyal, too forgiving, too soft, too hopeful, so He allowed their character to break your heart so their presence wouldn't break your destiny. You think you're healing from something small, but you have no idea what God saved you from behind the scenes. If He had allowed them to stay longer, their influence could have diverted your calling. Their voice could have drowned your purpose. Their insecurity could have infected your confidence. Their negativity could have poisoned your faith. Their double-mindedness could have confused your direction. Their hidden motives could have sabotaged your mission. You only saw the surface of what happened, but God saw the spiritual roots beneath it. And when God sees danger attached to someone's heart, He will allow that person to hurt you just enough so you let go before the real damage comes. Think about Joseph. His brothers hurt him, betrayed him, sold him, but God allowed it to get him to the palace. Think about David. Saul hurt him, chased him, hunted him, but God allowed it to push him into kingship. Think about Jesus. Judas hurt him, betrayed him, exposed him, but God allowed it to fulfill the prophecy that saved humanity. Pain has always been God's unexpected vehicle for protection. He doesn't waste hurt. He uses it to position, to preserve, and to prepare. And maybe you're still carrying the memory of what happened, still replaying the moment, still wondering why God didn't block it. But what if God didn't block it because that pain blocked something far worse? What if that heartbreak saved you from a lifetime of emotional bondage? What if that betrayal saved you from a destructive partnership? What if that disappointment saved your ministry, your peace, your sanity, your calling, your future? When God allows someone to hurt you, it is because He is protecting you from a harm you could not see. And when God steps between you and danger, He will use whatever tool necessary, even pain. When God allows people to hurt you, overlook you, reject you, or walk away from you, it is rarely about the moment you are standing in. It is almost always about the future God is preparing you for. Many times we think the pain was accidental, or the betrayal was unnecessary, or the rejection was unfair, but God sees ahead in a way you cannot. He knows what lies around the corner. He knows who is meant to accompany you and who is not, and He knows the dangers you cannot see. Sometimes God will allow someone's hurtful actions to become the very wall that protects you from deeper wounds. He will let a person exit your life because their presence would have sabotaged the blessing He is planning for you. The tears you cried may feel wasted, but heaven wastes nothing. Every painful moment has purpose stitched within it, and sometimes that purpose is protection. There are moments when you begged God to let someone stay, and they still walked away. You asked God to fix the relationship, and instead it collapsed. You prayed for loyalty, but God exposed their intentions. At the time it felt like devastation, but later you looked back and realized that if God had answered the way you wanted, you would have walked into disaster. The very people who hurt you were unknowingly building a shield around your destiny. God allowed their actions to reveal their hearts so that you wouldn't trust what was never trustworthy, lean on what was never stable, or connect your future to someone who could not grow into it. What felt like heartbreak was actually God pulling you away from danger you did not see coming. Sometimes God lets someone disappoint you early so they won't destroy you later. He lets their true nature surface, not to crush you, but to free you. When God is preparing to elevate you, He cleans your environment first. He removes the voices that would drown out your calling, the jealousy that would sabotage your progress, the negativity that would poison your purpose. When God allowed the hurt, it wasn't because you were weak or unworthy. It was because you were chosen. And chosen people are protected people. Sometimes protection comes wrapped in pain, because if it came wrapped in comfort, you might cling to what God is trying to separate you from. The very discomfort you fought against was the divine push you needed to move forward. Many times you didn't know when to leave, so God let pain do the pushing. You didn't know when to let go, so God let disappointment break the grip you refused to release. You didn't know when a season was over, so God allowed the hurt to close the door for you. Pain became the alarm clock that woke you up from a place you had outgrown. Rejection became the redirection you needed. Separation became the sanctification that prepared you for your next level. What looked like loss was heaven rearranging your life for something better. Think about the times you cried over someone who eventually showed you they were never meant to stay. Think about the opportunities you thought you missed that later turned out to be traps. Think about the doors that closed and the ones that opened because of it. You can see now that God's fingerprints were all over the hurt. You didn't understand then, but now you see that God was protecting your future from the things your heart wanted at the moment. If God had allowed the wrong people to stay, they would have dimmed your fire, drained your energy, and derailed your destiny. The hurt was painful, but it was necessary. It protected your purpose. Even now, God might be allowing certain people to misunderstand you, certain relationships to fade, or certain situations to shift. You may feel alone, but you are not abandoned. You may feel confused, but you are not forgotten. Whenever God removes people, He is preparing to replace their space with something holier, stronger, healthier, and aligned. The hurt is not random, it is strategic. God is pruning your life, cutting away what cannot carry the weight of your calling. What God is building in you requires clarity, purity, and focus, and sometimes that means letting go of what you once thought was permanent. When you look back later, you will see that the people who hurt you were instruments in God's hand. They pushed you into prayer. They forced you to rely on God more deeply. They made you stronger, wiser, and more spiritually sensitive. Their betrayal sharpened your discernment. Their departure cleared your path. Their rejection protected your anointing. If they had not hurt you, you would have stayed in places beneath your calling, surrounded by people who did not value your gift. God allowed their actions not to break you, but to build you into someone who can handle where He is taking you. So instead of resenting the pain, begin to recognize the protection inside it. Instead of asking why they hurt you, begin to ask what God was saving you from. Instead of mourning who left, begin to thank God for who He is sending. The hurt was real, but so is the protection. The tears were painful, but so was the experience that God shielded you from. You didn't lose anything. You were being preserved. And soon you will understand that the hurt was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of God's protection over your destiny. My friend, as we close this message, remember this truth with all your heart. Nothing that hurt you was wasted. Nothing that broke you was random. Nothing that confused you was a surprise to God. People may have wounded you, betrayed you, disappointed you, or walked away when you needed them most. But God took every one of those moments and turned them into a shield, a lesson, and a divine redirection. The hurt they caused was not the end of your story. It was the doorway to your protection. God allowed certain people to exit so your destiny could enter. He allowed certain battles to confront you so you could discover the warrior within you. He allowed certain tears to fall so your spiritual vision could clear. He allowed certain disappointments so your foundation could be rebuilt on Him alone. You may not have understood it then. You may not have seen His hand while you were crying, breaking, or carrying what felt too heavy. But now you can look back and see that He preserved you, separated you, and secured you through the very things you thought were meant to destroy you. The hurt didn't stop you. It positioned you. The pain didn't end you. It prepared you. The rejection didn't diminish you. It redirected you onto the path God always planned for you. So stand today with peace in your heart. Don't hold bitterness toward the people who hurt you. Don't fear the moments that wounded you. Instead, thank God that He turned every scar into wisdom, every heartbreak into clarity, and every closed door into divine protection. You are not broken, you are built, you are not abandoned, you are covered, you are not lost, you are led. From today forward, walk with confidence, walk with gratitude, walk with spiritual understanding, because now you know God allowed their hurt to protect your destiny. What tried to harm you only strengthened you. What tried to stop you only prepared you. And what tried to break you only pushed you closer to the purpose God designed specifically for you. Your story is not one of defeat. It is one of divine protection. And the God who protected you then is the same God who will guide you into everything He promised.